Welcome, my dear friends, to part 19 of the book of Revelation. And we come to the fall of the Middle Eastern third of the empire, because we've already seen the fall of the Western third with the city of Rome in the year 476. And this leads us to the spread of the Muslim religion. We leave Western Europe behind and turn towards the east, to the Byzantine Empire. Chapter 9 takes us to the bottomless pit. What could this be? It is also described as the abyss. One thing we could do is look for the lowest spot on the earth. That is the area of the Dead Sea, which is the lowest spot in the world, which is bordering Israel and Jordan. That takes us to the Middle East, which was then part of the Byzantine Empire. The fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. This is the arrival of a prominent leader in the Middle East, who was given control over the area. That is what a key stands for. A key gives a person control over a house, a hall, a car, a train, a stadium, or whatever the key is for. He opened the bottomless pit, and there came a smoke out of the pit. The sun and the air were darkened by the smoke. The sun was the Byzantine Empire. It would be seriously weakened by this new leader, but it would not be completely wiped out. And the air, the sun is a distant star, but the sky, star in the sky, but the air is everywhere. It stands here for the common people who are in all parts of the world, and in every town, village, valley and plain. The leaders, on the other hand, are only a select few. The common people are normally represented by the earth, so why is the air used for them here? Because just as the air is everywhere, everything in the lives of the common people would be radically changed. So it seems to use the symbolism of air here for the common people to show how really thorough this campaign would be, perhaps more thorough than many others in history. It would radically change the lives of the common people. Locusts came out of the smoke. Plagues of locusts are much more common in the Middle East than in Europe. So this too points us to the Middle East. They eat a wide variety of plants and crops. They can gulp everything of these in their travels, in the same way that the followers of this leader would gulp up the cultures of the peoples whom they conquered and impose their own culture on them. The concise Oxford Dictionary says locust, any of various African and Asian short-horned edible grasshoppers of family Acridae, migrating in swarms and consuming all the vegetation of districts. They were forbidden to harm the grass, neither any green thing nor any tree. Grass and trees here stand for literal things and not symbolic things, as is usually the case in the book of Revelation. How do we know that they're literal here? Because we have those words, those very words out of one of their own leaders, which are recorded for us. We have the record of the words of their commander. He said this to his troops: remember, you are always in the presence of God. Avoid injustice and oppression. Destroy no palm tree, nor burn any field of corn. Cut down no fruit trees, nor do any mischief to the cattle, only such as you need to eat. This was an admirable address by the leader to his troops in any age. So we must at least raise our hat to the leader. We will be naming him shortly who spoke these words, but it shows that there was that literal aspect then of these words in the fulfillment in actual fact. Nor burn ye fields of corn, cut down no fruit trees, nor do any mischief to cattle, except of course the ones they should kill for food. Only attack those men who have not the seal of God on their foreheads. This was a continuation of the address by the leader. So this is a religious statement. So what is being described here is a big new religion which would arise in the Middle East sometime after the fall of the city of Rome in 476. That new religion is the Muslim religion. The star falling from heaven. This is the Prophet Muhammad. Now, how did he fall from heaven? Because he was in a high position in society in Saudi Arabia, and when he began to publish his new religion, he was driven from that position. So he quite literally fell from his high position, and he had to flee in what is known as the Hajj, or the pilgrimage. He fell or was forced out of his high position as a star falling from heaven to the earth. But of course he soon established himself as a star in his own right. He was given the key of the bottomless pit. That was the Quran. This was the key which opened the way to control over the Middle East. The sun and the air were darkened. The government of the Roman Empire and the way of the life of the people were radically affected by the spread of the Muslim religion. They were darkened because their systems and cultures were either totally swept away or partially swept away. They were not to kill them. Now this is a strange statement, because we know that all armies kill human beings in all ages and wars. So they were told not to kill. So we'll see later on exactly what that means. It must have a different meaning. It cannot possibly mean do not kill people, because they did. So let's see in a minute what it actually means. They were not to kill them. The Muslims were not allowed to kill the Roman Empire. That's what's meant. Because things can die as well as people. Mm-hmm. If you consider the British Empire, it has died. The Spanish Empire, which controlled half of South America, has died. The French Empire, which controlled whole chunks of Africa, has died. And you could say that if they were ended in battle, they were killed. So that's what's being spoken of here as the Roman Empire. They were told, you must not kill it. So the Arabs were not allowed to kill the empire off. It still survived, admittedly in a reduced state, but it still survived though.
May I ask there, so what about the people?
Well, the people suddenly...
Were they killed?
Yes, there was thousands of people killed, of course, in the campaign, in the campaign of the Arab armies. But it's not referring to the people, it's referring to the empire. They were only allowed to badly weaken it. At that time, it was the Byzantine Empire, and that was in question. But that they should be tormented for 5 months and hurt for 5 months. 5 months plus 5 months equals 10 months. That is 300 days. And a day stands for a year, so 300 days stands for 300 years. The power of the Arabs would be at its height for 300 years. That's as an empire. The Prophet Muhammad was born about the year 570 in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, as it is called now. He died in Medina, Saudi Arabia in 632 at the age of about 62. He was the founder of the Muslim religion, which is also called Islam. Muslims believe that Muhammad received revelations from God and these form the basis of the Quran, which is the Muslims' holy book. Wikipedia says, Muhammad united Arabia into a single Muslim society, with the Quran as well as his teachings and practices forming the basis of Islamic belief. By the time of his death, most of the Arabian Peninsula had converted to Islam. So the power of the Arabs could be said to start in 632, the year of Muhammad's death. Soon after that, the Muslims began to spread their religion by war. They captured Jerusalem in 637. So they captured the holy city of Jerusalem, the city of Jesus, the city of the prophets, just a mere 5 years after the death of Muhammad. And within 50 years of Muhammad's death, they had spread as far as Gibraltar. Muhammad was succeeded as the leader of the Muslims by Abu Bakr, who was given the title Caliph. This title was abolished in 1924 and does not exist today. It was Abu Bakr who gave the instructions to his troops not to damage palm trees, fruit trees and fields of corn. The locusts looked like horses armoured for battle, so we know that the locusts really stand for the Arab armies of horse soldiers, which the Arabs made great use of. They made great use of the horse, of course, like a lot of armies did in the past. Why are the Muslims compared to locusts? Because they gulped up the cultures of the peoples they conquered, just as the locusts eat up the vegetation along their paths. They had what looked like gold crowns on their heads. Arab headdress has always been quite distinctive. We do not know exactly what type of headdress the Arab soldiers wore at that time, but suppose it was yellow, it would fit the description well. Their faces looked like the faces of men. The natural face of a man is a beard, because of course those of us who shave every day are actually going against nature. The nature means the hair, face to have hair, but it's just simply not convenient in many cases. But that is nature's way, though we have to admit. Nearly all the Arabs had beards, whereas many of the Roman men and many of the Roman soldiers that we see, we'll say, pictured at the time of Christ, were clean shaven. They had hair like the hair of women. Pliny the Younger lived at the time that John wrote the book of Revelation. Pliny was a Roman writer. He describes the long hair, the Arabs as having long uncut hair. This is from his book entitled Natural History, Volume 6, page 28. Other writers up to Jerome in the 5th century do the same. They had teeth like lions' teeth. Lions have ferocious teeth which gulp up every animal which they kill. And the Arab soldiers were preachers, of course, as well as soldiers. Preaching is done with the mouth. Their preaching resulted in the gulping up of the existing religions in the areas which they conquered. They had body armour like iron breastplates. This was the body armour which ancient warriors wore for protection. They had a king over them who is the angel of the abyss. This was the leader of the Arabs. He was an angel, which means messenger. Anyone who plays a major role in directing world events can be called an angel, a messenger. Not of course a heavenly angel, but an earthly angel, a messenger of Jesus in directing the world events at the time. The word angel in the Bible usually refers to heavenly angels, like we have said before, but it does sometimes definitely refer to humans. the context or the setting normally makes clear which is meant. The angel of the Arabs was the Caliph. He was their supreme leader, and he was like a king over them. They had several Caliphs, in fact, who succeeded each other, one after the other, as leaders. The position was abolished, as I said, in 1924, so the Muslims do not have a supreme leader now. It was strange that they actually abolished the office, because of course it was an extremely important office in the Muslim religion, but they abolished it after the First World War, and especially the defeat of Turkey. The angel of the abyss, the concise Oxford Dictionary says abyss, bottomless chasm, deep gorge, immeasurable depth, primal case. When Muhammad appeared, he was given the key of the pit of the abyss. A pit is a hole in the ground, so pit is directing us to an actual spot in the earth, and the lowest spot on earth is the area of the Dead Sea, which is in the area of the Arabian Peninsula. There is no need to identify the area a second time. It is the angel of the abyss, not the angel of the pit of the abyss, that was in question here, showing that they must have different meanings. The caliphs were given control over the Middle East, the Middle Eastern part of the Roman Empire, that was, so that the whole area is called the abyss. Here it has a symbolic rather than a literal meaning, but there is the literal aspect of the Dead Sea being the lowest spot on earth, which could be described as the abyss. There is the overall area then of Arabia, which could be also described as the abyss in the wider sense. And the word abyss is primal chaos, is part of its meaning, and that is what Christianity had descended into by the time of Muhammad. The greater part of the church had gone astray, bringing in false doctrine. Only a faithful few remained true to the gospel. The Muslims were sent by Jesus to punish the false church. That is how the caliphs were angels of the abyss. The name of the angel was Abaddon in Hebrew and Apollon in Greek. Abaddon and Apollon both mean destroyer. The caliphs were destroyers of false Christianity and of other false religions, and also cultures. However, it would be far from true to say that it was all destruction with the Arabs. They brought a large amount of art and learning and skill with them to the peoples whom they conquered. They built the Alhambra Palace in Granada, Spain in 889. It is a magnificent structure. The Arabs who ruled Spain were called Moors. And the Arabs brought their own strong culture with them, but they crushed the cultures of the peoples whom they conquered. Edward Augustus Freeman was an English historian who was born in 1823 and died in 1892. In 1881 he brought out a book entitled The Historical Geography of Europe. The book was published by Longmans, Green and Company of London, and the pages 111 to 112 he wrote, in a few campaigns by the Arabs, the Roman Empire lost one of the three great divisions of the empire. Every province that was conquered by the Saracens, which he calls the Arabs, was utterly lopped away. It became the possession of men altogether alien and hostile in race, language, manner and religion. So it's actually a total change then in cultures. You must attack only those men who have not the seal of God on their foreheads. This was another instruction then, which is recorded in Revelation. The Muslims had a certain amount of respect for Jews and Christians, since they believed in one God. The Muslims had no respect for pagans, but persecuted them severely. Abu Bakr, the successor of Muhammad, told his troops, "You will find the type of people who belong to the synagogue of Satan. Be sure to cleave their skulls and give them no quarter till they either turn to Mohammedanism, in other words, turn to Islam, or pay tribute." Edward Gibbon wrote, "The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire" again. So he wrote, "An immense multitude of infidels was slaughtered. Abu Bakr sent a letter to the tribes of Syria in which he wrote, I intend to send the true believers into Syria to take it out of the hands of the infidel. The wars of the Muslims were sanctified by the Prophet, but among the precepts and examples of his life, the Caliph selected the lessons of toleration that might tend to disarm the resistance of the unbelievers. The polytheists and idolaters who were ignorant of God's name might be exterminated. The disciples of Abraham, Moses and Jesus were solemnly invited to accept the more perfect revelation of Muhammad, but if they preferred the payment of a moderate tribute, they were entitled to freedom of conscience and also freedom of religious worship. So, the effect of the Muslim conquest of the Middle East, the Muslim campaign began about the year 632. It was foretold to be at its height for 300 years. And Rahdi was reigning as Caliph in 936. Edward Gibbon wrote of him, but I think we will leave this part for now. And
may I ask a small question? I don't understand.
We'll continue.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's nearly enough.
It was so amazing. I learnt so much from it. I would like to hear Patrick's question.
I would like to ask, because I don't understand myself. What could you explain the meaning of infidels? Who are they?
Well, the word infidel means a person who has no faith. That's what it actually means.
Okay.
And of course,
They're the enemies of Islam. Anyone that's not of Islam.
Anyone who is an enemy of Islam is described as an infidel.
Christians have.
Well, the thing is, they often have said that they accept people of the book, Christians and Jews, but there are other indications that they actually regard Christians and Jews as infidels. I think it's difficult to be certain of who exactly they mean by infidels.
Anyone that's not of Islam.
Is it? Yes, I see. You think
Look what they did to the Americans. Do you remember those Americans that they captured?
Oh yes.
And they beheaded them.
Yes, yes.
Do you remember?
Yes.
And they were Christians.
They were Christians? Yes.
Yeah, they were real Christians
Yes.
from America. No, an infidel is definitely someone that does not follow Islam.
I see.
And they would like to wipe out all of us.
Yes, indeed. And of course, the Muslim armies swept from Gibraltar. They swept down to Africa then. They didn't do that until the century after Muhammad's birth, but they went down, of course, and went right through North Africa, for as far as Morocco and as far as Casablanca and Marrakesh and those places which now are big cities and
probably the Sahara area.
But of course, the people that were very prominent before they arrived were the Berbers, who were still there in North Africa. But of course, their independence was taken away, and I think there are people that have maybe been a bit ignored by history. They have no nation of their own.
No, you're right.
But they are a separate people, and whose language is not Arabic at all,
No.
very different. But they are Muslims, but separate.
But were they Muslims originally?
No, they were not Muslims before the Arabs came.
No.
The Arabs brought the Muslim religion with them. As we know, the Donatists were, I would say, mostly Berbers. we don't know what there may have been other African natives who were not Berbers among the Adventist Church, but certainly I would say that a lot of them were actually Berbers.
There are 7 different kinds of Berbers
Yes.
in North Africa and further Central Africa. I believe I read.
Thank you.
So that it's our session.